But on that note, I will be introducing the final panel of the day. They're going to close out the day with a bang, because this is also something that everybody's interested in right now. This is the hot topic of the moment. So it's the debate about centralization's role in Web3. How do we fit those two topics in, because they're seemingly contrary one to the other, right? Centralization and decentralization, and where do we find that bridge to be able to coexist? A hybrid approach is what I call it. So in this next panel, we'll be debating centralization's role in Web3, and is it the necessity of betrayal of decentralized principles? So we're going to find that out, and we're going to find out just how certain exchanges and entities are going about framing that conversation. And I will announce the speakers now, with no further ado. We've got Stefan, CEO and CFO of BitMEX, Athena, CEO of Cefu, Florent, VP Product of Messari, and Dorian, Head of BD Europe of KuCoin, moderated by Peter, Deputy Dean, instead. So please, big round of applause for the last panel of the day. Let's bring the energy back to the room.
All right, thanks for coming out, everyone. And we've got right to the heart of the matter. So many people came to crypto, came to Web3 because of decentralization, the excitement, the intellectual energy there, and yet the reality is evidently proven more complicated. So we really want to probe that today. Maybe just to see where you're at, how many people here primarily interact with Web3 on decentralized platforms and protocols? How many people are primarily decentralized? There you go, hardcore. How many people, honestly, primarily doing centralized? Good number. How many people kind of split, doing both? Nice, all right. There you go, speakers. You get a sense of what you're dealing with out there. I'm going to let the speakers introduce themselves as we kick off. So, Stefan, you come, although he's been in crypto and Web3 for a while, originally came over from the dark side and banking. So just kick off, what do you see the role of centralization, particularly then talking again about your company and your organization?
Yeah, maybe just some words on that, because I could go on forever about that. Yes, I come from the so-called dark side originally, but I have been active in the DLT space since 2012 personally, not professionally all the way, but since 2012. And for me, the technology pushes the boundary of centralization versus decentralization. That's true, absolutely. If you look at transaction cost theory, we can have more things decentral or organized with people that don't know each other personally better than before, but it doesn't mean that we can go all decentralized. I mean, running a nation state on a blockchain, I don't know whether we are there yet, maybe in a couple of years, but not now. So in my company, so I work for BitMEX, is one of the firms in the centralized exchanges space in crypto that has been here for ages if you look at crypto. It's the third crypto winter we're through, so we learned our lessons already. And I would say BitMEX is a little bit a hybrid. So it's a centralized exchange, of course, but we try to involve our community and our members in a quite decentralized way, especially for validation of what we have and what we do.
Very good. Okay, Athena, you're up next. So Cefu, formerly rebranded Binance Custody. So same thing, tell us a little bit about your view on centralization.
Yeah, sure. So actually Cefu is rebranded from the Binance Custody. So also myself, I had been in Binance for 5 years, like starting from the foundation, fiat, and NFT, and now the institutional business. So actually, I think a lot of people coming to the space because of the appealing side of decentralization. However, I think looking beyond centralization versus decentralization, I think I have been asking myself and also all my colleagues one question. So what is, if only highlight one potential barrier for the whole Web3 world, what it is? I think my answer is adoption. So I think the low level of adoption is really a fundamental problem for a lot of like people engaging in that space. So to this point, I think centralization is still playing a very essential role on helping to push adoption. And also, because we are actually exclusively for the institutional clients, I know that the difference between the retail and the institutions. So the retail are more like maybe they're dealing with relatively smaller size of the crypto, and they are actually controlling, have the ownership of their own asset. But the institutions are different. Normally, they control a larger size of the asset, and also they have a lot of different decision makers in their organizations. So they have a long list, the checklist of everything, like the regulatory environment, and insurance, security, and everything. So the centralized organization still playing a very essential role to accompany them on navigating all the things in the space. So this is actually my take from that.
Very good. Lots of things that we can unpack in your statement so far. Dorian, over at KuCoin, same opening question for you.
Well, I'm going through a legitimacy crisis right now. I've been in the space far less time than these people on my left, so let's try to make it count. So Dorian here, I've been head of business development for KuCoin in Europe. And well, we are trying to be the people's exchange here. What it means for decentralization and centralization is that we take the approach that decentralization should always be a choice. And you should always have the choice to custody by yourself. And maybe the possibility of custodying by yourself is more important than actually having everybody going through the process. Maybe the fact that we are centralized agents in an industry that promotes full decentralized processes is not so paradoxical as it seems. And we'll see why later on, but there is this whole issue about mass adoption these days. And as we see ourselves as the people's exchange at KuCoin, we really see ourselves as a gateway for people to onboard and therefore to have the possibility to access decentralization later on.
Yeah, no, clearly, user experience has been a bit of an Achilles heel for decentralization. And if you want mass adoption, it's got to be solved. So very good. Florent, last opening statement, but super interesting. VP product at Messari. Tell us.
Yeah, so I've been working in Messari for about 4 years. So Messari is a centralized data aggregators and research platform. But we work a lot with centralized companies, including a lot of exchanges, but also with decentralized protocols. So we really have two sides of our business, working with centralized traditional companies, but also with protocols themselves. I think, on my side, working in Messari, I look a lot at the data side. And when we look at data, it's really hard to say, what does decentralization mean? I think often people confuse something being open with something being decentralized. Uniswap is open, anyone can trade on it, but does it mean it's decentralized? And then what does that mean? Is the governance decentralized? Is the operation decentralized? Like, there's a lot of question under it, so happy to go deeper when we get into the question, but really at Messari we look at the metric side and we work with both centralized companies and decentralized communities.
Super interesting. Well, if anyone wants to probe a little bit the data side, especially given what's happening out there, that would be interesting and we can get a professional reaction. Okay, so centralization is part of the ecosystem, part of the space, and so is decentralization. Why don't we let Dorian, why don't you kick this one off? A little bit your initial thoughts on the balance between decentralization and centralization. I mean, you started with the choice idea, but how do you see that? And also, how might it play out over time?
Well, I think it's all about where we're heading and what are our objectives. So the balance that we want to reach is for users to always have the choice. This will be the sign that something has gone wrong if at some point, for some reason, you don't have the choice to self-custody from centralized exchanges. This is really not the situation we're heading to. Actually, what we learned from 2022 is that we need more hybridation with decentralized products, not less. And that's where we have developed like decentralized versions of our product, like the Halo wallet for KuCoin, which was beforehand the KuCoin wallet that we rebranded. And I think that now every major exchange have their own version of this product, which is a very good thing as we are developing our own ecosystems around it and heading this direction. In a more philosophical approach, if we look back at the internet itself, we are always comparing what's happening with the cryptocurrency market and how the internet got adopted. And the truth is, there were actors, agents that made the internet something big and that brought these billion users in the first place. I don't think we should just only wish that this is going to happen in the crypto industry space. I think that we are the agents that will bring this billion of users, which will then go on their own way, stay with us, leave us, whatever. There will be an enormous amount of users, even more later on, adopting us. But we have to bring this mass adoption to even allow the possibility for decentralization to be a choice.
Super nice point about the internet. Clearly a mix of decentralized and centralized actors. Also a certain level of industry governance was happening, if you unpack that. I think definitely could be some lessons now. Stefan, maybe you next. Again, balance between decentralized centralization. Again, if I was going to push you a little bit, like once you lay out the pros and cons, what are the use cases where you see decentralization being good, and what are the places where centralization really has added value?
Yes. I mean, you said from a philosophical standpoint what we believe too. It's about choice, right? And in terms of where we come from, we believe that the way we provide services, the safety we provide, and the insurance we give to our customers, I mean, it really depends on how much you know what BitMEX is doing, that this is actually providing value over and on top of some of our decentralized or DeFi competitors, right? So, and if you weigh about what is it, is there one size fits all? No, it's not, right? You might be trading one specific contract and you're the best expert for that, and you do that 24/7, then you might want to go to a decentralized platform, and that's completely fine. I would do that myself. But if you say, I have an underlying need in a decentralized asset like Bitcoin, and we are basically a Bitcoin exchange, then your use case is you come to us to get a service, right? To do something that you don't want to take care of yourself all the time. So, and then centralization really adds value. So we have backup systems, we have backup processes, right? You can call us if something goes wrong, right? You don't need to do that in the code yourself. So, and with that, and with giving a lot of transparency to our users or traders, basically, you can redo our proof of reserves and proof of liabilities twice a week, right? That's transparency. You can control us, so which is a level of decentralization, not in terms of processes, but in terms of information sharing and sharing what we do. So you can really see on-chain what we're doing with clients' funds, right? So this, even some of the decentralized versions do not, in a way like we do, like easily accessible. That's what I say. It's about ease of access, and you have choice. We don't force anyone, right?
Athena, I guess over to you. See if you have anything similar or different to what we've heard so far, but then also maybe talking a little bit about what you brought up before, the role of centralization in driving adoption, both institutional and retail.
Yeah, so I really want to echo the point about giving the users the options. Actually, we are always serving the users, because all the product we are building is really down to what is really needed by our client or consumers or users anyway. So for example, like the custody solution we are building, I should say it is a centralized platform with some decentralized elements. So the reason why we are building in that way is like because we want to provide a really zero trust environment. For example, the MPC technology that we are using right now is to decentralize the key shard. So we hope to provide an environment there's no single point of failure. And also because of the centralized role that we are playing, we can ensure that we can increase the efficiency a little bit and also try to provide the transparency at the same time on letting the people to prove that their assets are really on chain, is not really held by, in some black box. but we're also providing all the insurance and auditing services that enable the institution client to use. I think at the end of the day, I think the institutional client, they really want to also achieve, you say about balance. It's not only about balance of the decentralization versus centralization. It's also a balance between security and also the yield and also the variety of the product they can get access. So I think those are the points that for all of us, we're building different kind of platform, no matter exchanges, custodian, or any data platform. We always need to think about that point in order for us to achieve the perfect balance.
Yeah, that resonates with me quite a lot. I just know what I want to echo and even amplify is, it's not an either or, right? For us, it's an and question. So the more DeFi platforms we have, the more decentralized stuff that's going on in crypto, frankly, we believe the better it's even for us. Because you might do something, you might stake, you might involve yourself in DeFi lending, etc. So you get returns you want to hedge. You come to, frankly, one of us, right? But then your main business is decentralized because you're doing it on decentralized platforms, but we use a centralized service provider to take care of a particular matter. And that's what we want to do. That's where we are here. We don't want to take care of everything. We want to take care of a very bespoke set of problems or problem statements and solve those for our customers.
Flora, I want to bring you into the conversation. You shared that you work with both decentralized players and centralized. What's your view, and especially on the data side, the strengths and weaknesses of these different approaches?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the way I see things is there is very few fully decentralized community or protocol. There is a lot of progressive decentralization usually. But if you look at the main DeFi protocols, for example, if you look at Uniswap, Compound, when we work with these different protocols, we interact with the DAOs themselves or the grants DAOs. But at the beginning of the story, there were actual centralized organization between these different protocols. There's still Uniswap Labs, Uniswap Labs Venture, there's the AVEC companies. So I think the balance is about not letting everything be decentralized and everyone can vote and decide and everyone can affect the protocol itself at any time. It's really about a balance between the right level of centralization and the right level of decentralization. And you can see that some protocols sometimes are claimed to be fully decentralized, and then you look at governance activity and you realize there is actually just 12 or 15 delegates that are voting on all of the votes, and they control more than 60% of the voting power. So, I don't want to say decentralization is a meme, but sometimes it can be a meme. So at the end of the day, it's always a question of balance, and a lot of them say it's what the user prefer. Like if the user prefer to swap on Uniswap, because it's just 1 click or 2 clicks if you need to approve, great. If the user prefer to use a centralized exchange, great. Like at the end of the day, it's the user's choice, and we shouldn't say centralization is bad or decentralization is bad.
You've moved Dorian to talk.
Yes, actually, it's good that I have somebody from Messari here, because then the data will be checked out instantly. But I believe that in terms of volumes, DEXs, even when the sexes are in the most turmoil, do not claim more than about 15% of daily volumes, something like that, which tells you the amount of people who still rely on sexes. And when we see this approach between centralization and decentralization, maybe we also need to worry about not being too ideological, because we brand decentralization as good in essence and centralization as being bad in essence, whereas in reality that's not how people use it, and that's not, we will bring people to use it.
All right, so maybe let's just double click on centralization. Today, 2023, going into 2024, what decentralized actors need to do to successfully play their role here, both in terms of potentially encouraging the right level of decentralization, building trust. I guess, Stefan, I'll kick off with you.
Okay, yeah, advocating for decentralization. I'd say, and it's not compulsory exhaustive, but a couple of things. Any decentral platform needs to be very specialized. So not doing everything at the same time, because then it becomes complicated and members might lose the interest or the intellectual capability of dealing with it. And I don't mean it in intellectual capability as intelligence. It's a matter of how much attention can you pay to a certain thing, right? So that's number one, a clear business case, what it's about. So for me, decentralized, especially in finance, DeFi platforms will be successful if they specialize on one or two very specific questions. That's number one. Number two, they need to deal with a matter of usability. Some have done that, some are very nice, right? But usually DeFi platforms, not as criticism, but they still need to solve the issue of how comfortable am I with using them, and how comfortable am I with using them if I don't use them every day. So if I have a DeFi platform, I'm using it 3 times a year, might be difficult. And then the last question for me is, how do those DeFi platforms solve, for me, the matter of customer support? That's a word. Just take it as a word. But who can I approach if I don't know how to go further? Yes, they have communities, right? And this is great. But if really something goes wrong, do I want to go to kind of a troll box and then being nuked for being too stupid to use it?
And that's good. And maybe just flip aside. On the flip side, what is it that centralized actors need to do to be successful? But
in a way, the same. So for me, in crypto, in crypto and Web3, those are the same topics.
Yeah.
I think where centralized players might have a benefit is in combining different services, because that can be centrally coordinated if it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes bad decisions happen. Frankly, if I look at BitMEX, we try to build a lot of stuff, let's say 2020 to 2022. We skip that. We go back to our original niche. We say, what can we do best? It's crypto derivatives for a specific set of traders, basically Bitcoiners, or at least crypto natives / more maximalists, and then provide everything around that, right? And the products, which is a smaller set of products than doing everything at the same time. So we don't want to become Coinbase. You can do it, if you can do it, but we figured out for ourselves it's not the right way. But still, we can offer a lot of contracts. We can do that very agile, bad word for me, but agile. So we can adapt, right? That's number one. So it's the same question, but the other question, what centralized exchanges can do better and what they need to concentrate on is user experience, availability, and reachability. So have a good customer support, communicate with, or let's say, get in touch with your community, be there every day, and do it consistently. That's for centralized players what you definitely need to do.
very good. Athena, I see you nodding, but what's your take on that? Any differences in views?
Yeah, I think the trend in the future that I should say everyone coming down here for decentralization is actually a spirit that exists in everyone's mind. I think eventually we are down to a world of decentralization. However, I think the elements of centralization will going to persist and facilitating the whole journey and will not going to disappear entirely. So it should play an essential role. So if I'm saying that the ideal world that I can foresee an important pillar, I should say I see 3 important pillars we should actually drive to the perfect point. Number one, I should say, is a very simple gateway for people to get engagement in the Web3 world. I should say overall, if I summarize, there will be a platform, a Web3 platform with a Web2 kind of user experiences, like what Stephen addressed about customer services, onboarding, and even KYC, KYB, etc. And then I think driving another pillar is about the protocols that we can increase the efficiencies, that we can address the issues about the congestion, etc. And number 3, I should say, is still about security and auditing, that maybe custodians are playing the essential role. But the elephant in the room, I should say, or the overarching thing is still about the regulatory clarity. I know it's a little bit tricky, but still, I think given that kind of clarity, a lot of people are getting more confident of coming to the space to co-build this space.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, regulatory clarity could play both ways in terms of centralization, right? So it'll be, it's a bit of a wild card in the whole space. So thank you for bringing that up. I don't know, maybe Florent, you're in product. Do you have a view on whether decentralized solutions will really close this gap on user experience? Do you have a view on that?
I think they will. They will for sure. I mean, personally, I don't necessarily. I'm onboarded. I have MetaMask. I mean, I have some assets there. I don't find it necessarily like really bad to interact with decentralized exchanges or centralized lending.
You may not be the typical person, though. I'm just saying.
I mean, not, but that's because I've been onboarded. I've been onboarded, and once I'm in, and the only thing I need to do to log in is just sign, which is a one-click button. So I wouldn't say like the user experience is really bad. The onboarding is really bad. But once you're in, actually, I know a lot of people that would rather use GMX than another derivatives platform because the user experience is quite good for them. So I think there is still a gap in terms of onboarding for sure. On-ramp, onboarding, how do you set up a wallet, how do you get funds to your wallet. There is on Ethereum, there is necessarily, the gas side that is, very annoying. But as, layer 2s, roll-ups develop and, we end up, paying less gas, as onboarding develop, I don't think there will be a big wall between the user experience on centralized platform and decentralized platform, especially when we talk about financial transaction, whether it's lending, whether it's taxes.
Because we heard a little bit this view before, which is really the centralized players can onboard people en masse, and then it leads, again, and then you give people the choice whether they want to decentralize, and that's sort of a path forward, and that appeals to you.
You've seen it with something like Coinbase as Coinbase Wallet, and other custodians have integrated with different DeFi protocols and different protocol governance natively because there was a big user demand there. So at the end of the day, from a product perspective, it's all about what the users want. If the users want to trade on Uniswap, I'm sure centralized exchange will integrate decentralized exchange.
Technology is full of complex relationships where you're both a complement and a competitor. So I guess just as centralized players, to some extent, sometimes you complement decentralized, sometimes you compete. Anyone want to sort of share how, do you guys feel like, hey, we've got to stay ahead of decentralized, or?
I think actually we are not competing once again on the same stage because we are just bringing to people the possibility to then continue to move on by themselves if they want this responsibility. And once again, this choice is responsibility. And if we believe in cryptocurrency in the beginning, it's because we believe that people should have this responsibility as a choice. So actually, I'm completely agree with what Stefan said. There is not a lot more to, going forward. You said, yes, maybe they will close the gap. Well, we are more than happy if they do, because then we have to innovate more and go forward. And I mean, our goal right now is going to have to onboard people who come from Web 2, and they will have not to see that they are actually moving towards Web 3. So I don't think DEXs are going in this direction. I don't see them doing that.
There's a lot of people left to onboard, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. Yeah.
I think the pie is still not big enough for us to compete. We need to make
even
the
with
pie
each
bigger.
other. But yeah.
We actually need to actually make the pie bigger, and then.
The external threats might be bigger than the internal threats within the industry, we say. Actually, so Athena, you did raise this without digging too much into all the regulatory stuff, but still, how, as centralized players, how has your thinking, your strategy shifted over the last year, right? So how has the shifting terrain impacted how you think about your business and what you need to do to succeed? Athena, you can kick off on that.
Yeah. I think like what we call for the regulatory clarity. I think in the past year, everything happened on like FTX or the banking issues. I think what the bad side of that is like the trust in the space has been shaken a lot. This is why actually a lot of institutions are leaving. But on the other side, I think that pushed the standard to a higher level, which actually people start to have the awareness of they need to have their own key to protect their asset. They need to have those different infrastructures to help them to build these kind of things better. So overall, I still think that this is the right directions. I fully I want to really adopt everything that pushes us to that point. So I think regulatory clarity is important. So for us, as a centralized platform, as just echo to what other panelists said, I think just providing the best product and options to those different, segmentation of the client to use.
Maybe you could, if you don't mind, would you be able to share a little bit what you're seeing on the institutional space now? So I imagine some of the uncertainty probably freezes things, but are there areas where you're seeing more growth or what? Just to give us some nuance.
Actually, they really, really want transparency, I should say. If only one word to really summarize what they want. Yeah. So as I said, if I write a triangle of their demand, there will be the security, variety, and also the high yield of the liquidity they want. But in the middle, as I dealing with all the institutional clients, they want transparency. They want to see how you operate. They want to see their assets are stored on the blockchain, not on a black box. They want to operate off-exchange solution that they don't really expose themselves to any third-party risk. They want to have their own control, but overall, I think transparency is what they really call for.
So when you're thinking about your services, how you're organized, that's like
it's all building
number one for your product team. Yeah. Stefan, same question for you. How, again, you've been through this a while, and in a way you were pretty well positioned.
Well, that's at least what we think. And here again, I'm a little bit differently positioned. It's not so much that we would love to see more regulatory clarity, because if you look at it on a meta level, it is pretty clear what they want, and even as a firm, we don't disagree with it. Where we struggle sometimes with is the ways how we should achieve this. So, as to your points, safety. Two big things on our platform, and it's not meant to be as a marketing gig here, right? But two things. We operate one of the largest insurance funds in the industry, and we have proven that we use it for the better of our customers. So we distribute out of the insurance fund. That has never been acknowledged positively by regulators. Secondly, our BitMEX research team and our wallets team have implemented, as our, let's say, worthy rivals here as well, proof of reserves, proof of liabilities. You can check whether what we state on our platform is true twice a week. You can't have that with a bank. You have that maybe every quarter with lag or delay, maybe every year. So you can build up what's there. On top of it, we function mainly on-chain. So even if you don't look at our proof of reserves, proof of liabilities, you can recalculate quite a lot. It has never been acknowledged positively by regulators, which is a little bit frustrating. Still, we want to work with them, because in the end, it's about building the trust and making sure that our users get what they want. Or for example, even in the biggest turmoil, we never stopped withdrawals. Yes, we have a little bit more cumbersome process because of security reasons, which we deem necessary. It has never been acknowledged positively, right? So I totally agree with your points on a conceptual level, where we see from the experience we had over the past 3 years is a little bit, we think we address a lot of those issues, and some of our competitors or worthy rivals do that too, but it's not acknowledged. So it's not about the clarity about where it's heading to. I would love to see clarity and even a little bit of putting a stop to adding not new goals, but the prescription of how we should arrive at there, because that's not open to technology. That's basically going back to banking like 50 years ago.
Very good. Well, Dorian, you came in the middle of all this, but what do you make sense of the moment the industry's in, and what you need to do to succeed?
We take the opportunity for clarity whenever we have it, but in the end, that's not going to be our decision. And at KuCoin, and I think all our competitors are doing the same, we now have to focus on the security of our users' fund first and foremost, and independent from what the regulators will say. So that's going to be like the main topic. Should it be by implementing the standard of the art technology for authentication of accounts, provide them as many tools as we can provide them to avoid phishing, to avoid all the scams and the spam that we see in the space, and there is a lot. Maybe this is our primary focus at the moment, and for the regulatory approach, we take what we see coming.
Anyone want to comment on also the regulatory competition, right? You have all these different jurisdictions. Obviously, the stance of the U.S. very different than the UAE or Switzerland, even the UK versus this. How does that influence? I mean, how do you react to that? How do you deal with that in running your business? It's a tough one, I know. So, without commenting, I don't
think it's a tough one. It's a delicate one. That's the issue. So I guess everyone has convictions about it. Maybe I'll start with some risk here.
Conviction.
Yeah, not. I don't.
Maybe later over drinks they will share some of their strong convictions with you. But for here on stage, Stefan,
I think what we see, frankly, is not so much competition, but I see it rather as we're able to see how far they are in understanding what's going on and having made up their mind what they think of it. So, for example, just exemplary, you see smaller jurisdictions who have made up their minds. Some have pivoted. For example, Hong Kong went from being very crypto-friendly to being very unfriendly to being very friendly again. So we hope that it stays as it is. And our firm and some of the others have been founded in Hong Kong, so we're attached to the place personally. It's not just for the regulatory environment, right? So we hope that it stays like this, and I guess everyone's happy that we now can work with the authorities there. And we're, I guess, like everyone else here, doing that. So then you see UAE, who's up for, frankly, grabbing business. They have made up their mind what they want to do with it. They are not coming, from my point of view, so much from the technology angle, but they're doing a good job in doing so. I'd say the EU with MiCA, and I'm European, have overdone it a little bit, because what they did is implementing kind of a CRR for crypto, which at that point in time might be a little bit premature, but at least they have made up their mind and they've said, this is the way. If you walk like this, you're welcome. If not, your choice. So it gives us the choice to act accordingly. Where I see some difficulties with the US approach is that, yeah, we might have some convictions, but it's unclear where it's going. It basically doesn't provide any certainty. No one can react to that. I mean, our firm has gone through a very painful process. We have gone out of the US even much prior to this, and we stay out. So we don't accept US customers, we don't do US business, for the matter of fact that we can't predict what's going to happen.
Anyone else want to touch the regulatory stick on this one? It's okay.
I think Stefan already addressed a lot of the difference between different jurisdictions. So I think for the custodian perspective, it's a little bit different with the exchanges, because our existence is actually to address their risk issues. I think it's very important that also for all the developers to find a place which can encourage their innovation, but at the same time control the risk. So we are actually playing a role on more helping the government understanding that, because I think education is still very key for both, the Web3 developers and, infrastructure builders, but also the regulators. We are helping them on consulting papers and helping them understand. I think this is a role that we are playing a little bit differently.
No, I just to connect, I mean, one of the good things about having central actors is you have the resources and the motivation also to try and manage the way the ecosystem interacts with the bigger world. And that's again, one of the roles you could potentially play. I want to land this thing, so we're gonna start wrapping up. I guess maybe I'll turn to everyone for final messaging. Let's maybe end on a positive note. It's the end of the day, so a little bit around what makes you optimistic, but also if you have any call to action for the audience and the community, that would be good. And really though, it is a serious moment. There is a sense in which crypto and Web3 needs to grow up in a way, and some of the adolescent behavior needs to be left in the past, I think. So let's start with Florent. You're right there. Closing thoughts for us. What makes you optimistic? What would you like to see people doing in the community?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, first tying back to regulation, I guess what makes me optimistic about this topic is at Messari we've seen a lot more demand about compliance products that we've seen in the previous years. So we work a lot with
It's
exchanges.
a seller's market on compliance.
I don't know if we work with you guys, but we work with a lot of
Complaint to what?
exchanges, custodians, even investors, and it means that people are taking this seriously, which I think is very important.
You can feel the industry growing up.
Exactly.
Actually.
Yeah, you can feel
Nice.
the industry growing up. I mean, you still have things on the side that maybe scam, meme coins, stuff like that. But on the other side, centralized actors and also decentralized organizations are taking things a lot more seriously than before. So I think that's really optimistic. Hopefully the US situation gets better. Hopefully.
I wouldn't count on it, but we can hope.
we can try to do as much as we can so that it gets better at least. On the other side, I think we're still very, very early. I think there was a lot of frenziness in 2017, 2018. Like crypto is great for everything. Every single company was doing a blockchain proof of concept. There was a DAO for everything in 2021. I think we've kind of got down. But a lot of the things that were not possible before in 2018, 2020, I think will be possible one day when the infrastructure gets better, when the technology gets better, when scalability is better. So knowing that we are just at the beginning of a long journey makes me very optimistic because we already have great products being built, and it's not going to end in 5 years, 10 years. I think it's going to be there forever.
All right, that's positive. Dorian, over to you.
Yep, one of the most optimistic take that we have is that the technology is not going to be uninvented and that this possibility will remain. So that's actually great. Actually, I quite disagree about the meme coin aspect and stuff. It's actually one thing that makes me optimistic as well, that communities still manage to grow organically and create all this traction about jokes, right? And they know there are jokes. Like everybody acknowledges it, the developer team, etc. They just gather around these common concepts, ideas, memes, etc. Like honestly, as a centralized agent, our role is not to say if they are right or wrong. We are just here to service a community that exists. If the community exists organically and there is actual traction, our role should not be to say if they are right or wrong, the utility is right or wrong. I don't think crypto should be centralized in this aspect even, at least for centralized agents. We're already centralized in many ways. Let's not add this one. So, yeah.
It does a lot of volume too, which I think is good for you guys.
Yeah, well, that's the externality, the positive externality.
Understood. Okay, very good. Athena, over to
Yeah,
you.
what made me so optimistic is actually the bear. We actually all experience a lot of different cycles, bull, bear cycle, but we are still here talking about these topics, and we hope that, I firmly believe that the green minds are very aligned, that we have to address the issues, we have to rebuild the trust. So the trust here is that builders are here, and then in the next bull market, we're still discussing the same topic, but with better hope. I think that's make me more optimistic.
Very good. And we're going to rebuild trust, yeah? Okay. Stefan.
Yeah. You basically said everything. For me, it's the most promising thing is our company has been through it's the third crypto winter, so to say. And this is the first time that basically no one speaks about Bitcoin not being there in a few months, which means it is an established asset, and with Bitcoin, all the other cryptos as well. So yes, it might take longer than the last times, but this is why we're here. So this makes me optimistic. So it's really, if you just look at that, we talk about will it be 20,000 in the floor or something, but not as yet will be gone anyway in 4 weeks.
Nice.
So actually, one question for Stefan. You said you had been in the space personally since 2012. Would you say this bear market is very different from the one you've already seen?
Yes, in a way, because this time the bear market, not overall, so the underlying issues are in the industry, but the bear market and the length of the bear market is driven by no finger pointing, but by regulators. It's the first time, which actually makes me optimistic for the asset class as such as well. It's now taken seriously, right? It's like, first they laugh at you, well, so sometimes then they fight you, and then you win, right? So this is how it goes. So I'd say it's different. So for me, it's more uncertainty when it will get better. I mean, in a way, like volumes are more people adopting it. I don't know, frankly. I know it will happen, but will it be in 3 months? Will it be in 6 months? And we are in that already for
Depends
over a
on
year.
us.
Yeah, it depends on us as well, right? So, and this, again, it makes me optimistic, but I'd say it's a little bit different to before, where you had 1 or 2 instances that drove everybody mad, you clean it up, and then it went like hell again. And we...
All right, so Florent, Dorian, Stefan, and Athena, thank you for really open and productive conversation. Please join me in thanking them for their insights.
Thanks,
you.
Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.